the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Cowboys. Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for tuning in. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. And joining me today, as always, is my co-host, Landon McCool. You can check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. You can also listen to him on the Best Coast Boys podcast. Landon, what's going on, sir?
I mean, I feel like I've been saying it all week, but we've arrived at football, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, we're in the best shapes of our lives. We're ready to go, right?
We're in the best. I don't know about that, but yeah, I mean, we're telling everybody that we're in the best shapes of our life, and everybody's packing up and getting ready to leave for Oxnard and making plans. So it's become very real recently, and you know, we're taking a brief reprieve from our breakneck pace to try to finish training camp previews to of course continue our annual tradition of Tuesday questions, which is always my favorite.
Yeah, we're just a couple days away from the Cowboys actually putting on pads. I heard that Hard Knocks has already started filming.
Already filming. Yeah.
It's going to be a busy time of the year. But Landon, let's get to those Twitter questions. We've got some really, really good ones. This first one comes from Mike, and I promise I did not write it, but it's a very good question. What level of prospect at linebacker is Micah Parsons? Because a lot of people who were disappointed on draft day, probably because they believe linebackers don't matter, where does he fit in inside the last 10 drafts as a college prospect? Well, first of all, shout out to Mike for saying linebackers don't matter. I appreciate that. I've gone ahead, Landon, and I've written up all the linebackers that have been drafted since 2012. I want you to just tell me if Parsons is a better prospect than this player or not. Are you ready?
So we're just giving a better or worse, right?
Yes.
Prospect.
Yes.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay. Luke Kuechly, 2012.
It's already going straight for the heart.
I would say no.
I would say that's almost a push because I don't know that he was – I think he was a much better pro than I expected him to be. So
he tested as an elite athlete and was really good at Boston College. I'm giving Kuechly the nod there. Okay. Ryan Shazier.
I would say slightly less.
You think he's a lesser prospect than Ryan?
A lesser prospect. Yeah. Okay. No. I would say Parsons is slightly more. Yeah. Well, no. Parsons. No, I would say slightly less because Shazier actually had I think multiple years of production to kind of put there. So
he did. He had a bunch of tackles at Ohio State. Okay.
Yeah. So probably close, right?
All right. CJ Mosley.
As a prospect, I mean, CJ Mosley was very well thought of coming out of college.
He was.
So
yes, he was.
I would say that he is
similar.
They're probably similar. Yeah, okay. I would say similar.
All right. Darren Lee.
He's Parsons is a better prospect. Okay. Yeah,
I agree. Next couple, Tremaine Edmonds.
Those are very similar, just because of
they are very similar in terms of style. Yep.
Yeah.
So I think I'd give I would give the edge to Parsons, to be honest.
Yeah, he's got more hype for sure. I would say. Yeah.
All right, Leighton Vander Esch.
Parsons.
Okay.
I think Leighton wasn't as.
No. I think Leighton got taken at the very top of where he should have been taken. I think,
and he was a late riser too. His name didn't show up in the first round talk until kind of later in the process.
This one is easy for me. Roquan Smith.
Better prospect coming out.
Yes.
Yeah. Roquan. Yeah.
Roquan. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now it gets a little tricky. Devin White. Devin White went 5th overall at Tampa Bay. There were some concerns about his coverage ability coming out of LSU. What do you think?
I mean, I think they're similar, honestly.
Okay.
I would say maybe Parsons more.
Okay.
Because I think no one batted an eye that Parsons got drafted where they did. And I remember Devin White was a surprise.
A little bit. Devin Bush. I think Parsons is better.
Parsons probably, yeah.
All right, next one. This one's really tricky. Isaiah
that's a good one. This is a good exercise, though.
Yeah, and I'll talk about why it's a good exercise in a second. Yeah. But Isaiah Simmons.
it's kind of a different thing. That's
like
that.
polar
This is
opposite types of players, right?
This is where we start getting into the apples and oranges situation, right? Because I don't even know that Isaiah Simmons is fully considered to be a linebacker, and I think maybe this is actually not an apples and oranges system. Maybe this is closer to a good comparison for Parsons because Parsons has some extended value outside of just playing linebacker, which I think is kind of what Simmons has too, but it's just in a different way. I would say that Simmons was more hyped prospect because everyone's talking about the future of defense and positionless football, and he kind of fits that role. But I don't know that he's a better prospect than Parsons.
Last one, Kenneth Murray. I actually think Parsons' game is very similar to Kenneth Murray. He's just far more athletic, but I feel like they play a very similar brand of football.
Yeah, I think Parsons above Murray just because Murray shouldn't have been drafted where they thought the Cowboys were going to draft him, and no one's batting their eye about Parsons getting drafted in the top 15.
All right, so according to you, Landon, you only have 3 linebackers that have better grades coming out of college than Michael Parsons. For you, that's Luke Kuechly, Roquan Smith, and Ryan Shazier. And the only one that I think I might argue with you a little bit is Ryan Shazier, just because he was very athletic and he had a lot of production, but he even was somebody who was a little bit of a late riser, and I think some people had some concerns about him in the run game. But basically what we're saying is he's not the very best linebacker to come out in the last decade, but inside the top 4-5 linebackers, yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and again, that's just, as prospects, right? Yeah. So we'll see exactly what they kind of turn out to be in the NFL, because linebacker is one of those positions where you definitely get surprises coming into the NFL. I think some positive, like I thought Leighton, his rookie year was way better than we expected him to be. And then obviously some negative. Some of these guys just, Simmons, for instance, is still taking a little bit to kind of get where he needs to go. And some of these guys just take a little bit longer.
I don't think he is.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's get to some more Twitter questions. But before we do that, I want to tell you guys about BetOnline, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action. Baseball season is in full swing, and you can track all of the action on BetOnline. Get all the latest news, odds, and info on all your sporting needs, including MLB, NBA, NHL, and UFC. Don't sit on the sidelines anymore, as this is your chance to get into the game as teams prep for their runs to the playoffs. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. All right, Landon, let's get to some more Twitter questions. I really like this one. This one's from Joshua. Who will be this year's training camp hype star who disappoints in the regular season, a la Malik Collins or Xavier Woods?
Well, I would say more Malik Collins than Xavier Woods.
Yeah,
Xavier Woods at least started and had some play. He just never took that next step to a level that we wanted. Collins is a good example, though. I mean, Malik is a good example simply because you saw a ton of him playing really well in training camp, and then just kind of never quite transferred that to the regular season.
I've got a guy.
Who's your guy?
The same guy it's been the last 3 years. What about Dorrance Armstrong?
Well, I was going to say Dorrance Armstrong is without a doubt a member of this club, right? Like, I mean, so you can't. I would say you can't really say him because he's already been it a couple of years before. I have concerns that it's going to be Nahshon Wright, because we've already seen it with a little bit with OTAs. There is a big difference between playing, that position in OTAs and practices, and then kind of taking it to the next level. We've seen. I'm interested to see how he performs with pads on. I think that's kind of where things equalize out a little bit. Now, having said that, he's a big guy, so it may actually help him when they get pads on a little bit because he can actually be a little bit more physical.
Yes.
Or what it could do is expose, hey, this is a big cornerback who isn't very physical. So I have concerns that he's gonna look really good out there because he's a big guy who apparently can move pretty well for a guy his size, but that doesn't always translate to NFL production necessarily. So he's a guy who I think is eligible just simply by the virtue of the fact that he has put up he's shown impressive stuff in OTAs, and he's a rookie, and so I think people will get a certain amount of hype behind that. only to potentially be disappointed if he can't transfer it to the regular season.
My fear is it's going to be Leighton Vander Esch, right? Like Vander Esch looks great when there's not actual tackling and you don't really have to take on blocks. But when he's out moving around in shorts, he's probably going to look really good. Like he's already done this offseason, right? Like we've already got the reports. Hey, this looks like the old Leighton Vander Esch. But my concerns aren't, when he's moving around, it's okay. When I need him to take on a block and make a tackle, can he do that? That's my concern. So Nation writes a good one. I hope you're wrong.
Me too.
But we shall see. All right, this next one, I've been teasing this one for you for a little bit. This one comes from Smarty Dom, I believe is the name. Explain what the Dallas offense is going to look like this year, because Mike McCarthy said West Coast offense, but he allowed Air Coryell language for the first year. Kellen is still naive to the West Coast offense and is terrible at run play design. Ben McAdoo is a tutor. Kellen's 4 verticals is not a red zone play. It's a weakness.
I may need you to read. That was kind of an amalgamation of different stuff there.
explain what the Dallas offense is going to look like this year. I think it's this guy does not like Kellen Moore.
Okay. Yeah. Look, I think it's gonna have some West Coast influence. It's gonna have some Coryell influence. I mean, offense. Like, look, we could talk about the different types of offenses and what they do well or what they're trying to accomplish here and there. But I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, there's like 50 plays in the NFL, and they all just get called different things depending on what offense you're in, right? And passing concepts can transcend, West Coast versus Coryell, and so really it's just about using the passing concepts they like with the team they've got, and then deciding how the best way to communicate that, right? Because I think a lot of times, the downside with West Coast verbiage is that it's very verbose, right? And the upside with Coryell is that it's a numbered based system for routes. It's a lot easier to get out of your mouth in a huddle. But obviously the West Coast system has a little bit more flexibility to kind of do some more things because it has more description, right? So, it's just about combining language and combining what. Okay, we call this dagger. All right, well, we call this sword. It's like, okay, well, that's all right. What are we calling it? We'll call it dagger. All right, cool. Like that's the kind of parsing that has to go when they kind of mixed these in. As far as the run game goes, I mean, I think, Philbin is going to be the guy who's designing a lot of that because he's the offensive line coach. He's had a lot of success, running a wide zone system at different spots. I think that they'll continue to use elements that they have in the past of power run game where they've had success there too. So they will definitely mix and match as they go. I don't know. I think Kellen Moore's done a pretty great job of calling plays and hasn't had too much of an issue. I don't imagine, from what we've seen, that Mike McCarthy is coming in here and trying to force a bunch of West Coast plays that are specific to the West Coast and not to the Coryell down anybody's throats that they don't want to run them. So, I think it's not so much, is this going to be West Coast or is this going to be Coryell? I'm sure there'll be principles of both. There are lots of principles that are in both. I'm sure they'll use them. The question is really about, language and how they communicate these things. And frankly, that's not even something that us as Cowboys fans necessarily need to worry about.
I agree. I'll sum it up. I think there's going to be a lot of passing, a lot of running, and a lot of points scored.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And look, I don't think that anybody that's in this offensive group is unqualified for their job. So I think we're in good hands.
I think we'll be okay. That's not the side of the ball that I'm worried about, really. At all.
No, not so much.
No. Okay, a couple more questions. This one from Brendan: is a trade for Xavier Howard, the cornerback from Miami, realistic? I would be okay trading away Michael Gallup. Landon, I can handle this one.
Yeah,
Xavier Howard wants a new deal. He has 3 years left on his current contract. Miami wants a first-round pick for him. The Cowboys don't have the cap space to fit him into their cap. They don't have the cap space to give him a long-term deal. If you wanted a cornerback that badly, you probably just would have paid Byron Jones last year. It's pretty clear their plan isn't to invest a lot of actual money into the position. And that's why I don't think it's realistic at all.
Yeah. And again, I think trading a wide receiver, a good wide receiver, a very good wide receiver for a good cornerback is not a good deal, in my opinion. You know, I think I am of the mind, and I've kind of been making this case that cornerback, defensive back, it's more your least important guy is just as important as your most important guy, because this is a matchup league. And so you need to make sure that you have a good base of 4 or 5 cornerbacks, not one cornerback that you're paying all the money to and then a bunch of CB5s behind him. So don't trade away the farm. Your offense is the meal ticket, guys. Stop trying to reduce weaponry on the offense, okay? Offense is how we're going to win games, how we're going to make the playoffs, how we're going to win the Super Bowl if we want to, or if we can. So
the only way they're going to have a chance is if this offense scores 30 points a game.
Yeah, it's not going to be by lessening the power on your offense and then maybe slightly getting better at defense. That's not how balance is not necessarily what we're going for. So you don't want to trade a valuable piece on offense to hope to get a slightly less valuable piece on defense. That's just not good team building, in my opinion.
All right, this next question is from Kevin. Who is the player on the team that is going to surprise exceed expectations to the national media, not necessarily to the Cowboy fans, but to the national media?
Maybe someone like Donovan Wilson, right? Like, we've been talking about a guy like this, and if he does, look, we'll talk about him tomorrow. We talk about safeties, but his spectrum of where he could land next year could be all over the place, right? He could be the third safety on this team. He could be a Pro Bowler if he continues on the trajectory that he ended the season on. There's nowhere to go but up for him. So I don't know that the rest of the national media knows about him so much. So maybe we'll start to see him a little bit kind of mentioned more if he starts playing well. I would say the other guy that probably is a little bit known in fantasy circles and probably not in the best way because he keeps breaking their hearts, but Blake Jarwin, I think, is a guy that potentially could it may not be in the national consciousness. It's definitely in the scope of all the other players that are on this offense, lesser known, right? Probably the least known guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if he starts having a really good year, Pro Bowl type numbers, then obviously he'll start making some noise, and his name will be on the lips of a lot of national media.
I got one. What about Michael Gallup? Like, I know we think he's a big name, but man, if you just watch ESPN, or I didn't mean to just call out ESPN, but all the big places.
It's really called out ESPN.
Well, I'm just saying, like, you'll notice that, like, they'll show the Cowboys' weapons, and it's Ezekiel Elliott and it's Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb, and a lot of times Michael Gallup is the guy that's left off those lists, despite having a 1,100-yard season in his second year. I really think he was on pace to have like a 1,200-yard season, 1,300-yard season with Dak. In fact, Landon, in his last 12 games, he was on pace like for 1,400 yards and 5 touchdowns. So if he stays healthy and Dak stays healthy and he plays all 17 games, I don't see any reason why he couldn't be 1,200 yards and 7-8 touchdowns this year. And I think that would really, really put him on the map to the national media, especially if he has some big games like in prime time. Like, I think that's what's going to make him a quote-unquote star.
I definitely agree, and I also think that ESPN is calling on the line. They're asking for their key card back, so you've been fired. So I'm sorry.
That's all right. That was on ESPN last year. Remember when
that's right.
Little Ezekiel quote?
Yes, we all remember. And we're all certain that someday we're just going to turn on ESPN and you're going to show up as a co-host somewhere.
Stephen A., Max Kellerman, just waiting for you guys. All right, let's take a quick break so I can tell you guys about RockAuto.com. It's a family business serving auto parts to customers online for over 20 years. They have everything from engine control modules and brake parts, motor oil, and even new carpet. Whether it's for your classic or your daily driver, get everything you need in a few easy clicks delivered directly to your door. The RockAuto.com catalog is unique and remarkably easy to navigate. Quickly see all the parts available for your vehicle and choose the brand, specifications, and prices that you prefer. Go to RockAuto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, locked on in the How Did You Hear About Us box, so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com today. All right, Landon, a fun question and then a serious one. This one comes from Paul. Which is better, cheeseburgers or bacon cheeseburgers?
Well, I mean, cheeseburgers or bacon? A cheeseburger and then a cheeseburger with something delicious on top of it? I mean I mean,
it's like these chicken wings. It's boneless, bony, and they're both good. You can't complain about either.
That's absolutely not the same thing at all. Bacon cheeseburgers are more delicious, I guess. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Okay.
I think we can get behind that. Yeah.
I'm fine with bacon cheeseburgers. All right. The real one, Geno Atkins. A couple of people were asking about him. He was cleared by the Cowboys doctor, Dr. Cooper. I don't know if the Cowboys have interest in him. I would assume they probably would, considering that he's a former All-Pro defensive tackle and they have a need. Do you expect the Cowboys to have an interest or potentially sign him?
I expect them to kick the tires. Just because of all those things you just mentioned. He's a guy that is a very good interior pass rusher. Isn't usually kind of on the market, but is because of shoulder injury. He spent a long time in Cincinnati, so they don't pay people really. I mean, they've already paid him once, but they don't pay anybody second contracts usually, or third contracts rather. So
yeah.
I think there's been rumbling about this for a long time. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that Cooper did the surgery, which is why he's doing this follow-up with Cooper. But yeah, I can't imagine that a team that has a potential really strong need for a pass rushing defensive tackle would not be interested in at least kicking the tires to see exactly what the asking price is for someone like Geno Atkins.
And I think Atkins is different than a lot of these other defensive tackle names that we throw out, because for the most part, he's been pretty durable in his career before this year where he missed 8 games with that shoulder injury. And I also think the Bengals were kind of tanking a little bit, so they didn't want to necessarily rush him out there. But he had 7
we beat them 30-4 or whatever it was when we played. We were terrible. So,
he played 7 straight seasons of 16 games. So he's been a pretty durable guy.
And this is a shoulder too. That's the other thing I'm just throwing. Yes. This is a shoulder, so it's not like a lower body injury, which is what you worry about with these older explosive guys, is because they lose explosion if they start getting accruing these lower body injuries. This is all upper body, so I feel hopefully that's healed. He definitely needs that shoulder, but the concern would be, especially with an older pass rusher, that he's got a lower body injury and lost some of his explosiveness. I don't know that that's the case.
Yeah, this is somebody who from 2015 to 2018, in those 4 seasons had 39 sacks. So when he's right, he can still get you close to double-digit sacks. I don't know if he's still at that stage of his career because he is, I'm looking at it now, he's 33 years old. But could he give you 4.5 sacks in a heavy rotation? I don't think that's unreasonable, right? And let's say
that's useful.
Yeah, and if we get to camp in the next couple of days and maybe a week or 2 of practices and the Cowboys they don't think they have the guy at defensive tackle, I think it makes sense to bring in somebody like Geno Atkins.
Absolutely. It's just what we talked about. They need to get into camp, see what they've got. And then, they've got options if they don't think that they have the firepower that they need. We don't necessarily need, like you said, to sign Geno Atkins to be a, 60 snap a game guy who has to get us 10 sacks in order to be useful. If he's part of a rotation, if he's a guy who can get you 5 or 6 snaps on 25 to 30 snaps a game, or even less than that, that's fantastic. That's something. It certainly may not be the Geno Atkins of 2005 or 2010. 2005 probably not, but 2010. But you know what I'm saying. But I think that there is still value in that player, and on top of that, veteran leadership. The guy has been around the league. So, just having another veteran presence in that defensive tackle group would probably be very useful with all these young players.
Hypothetically, if the Cowboys did sign Geno Atkins, are you better off keeping him in a third down pass rushing role, or considering the Cowboys defensive tackles, using him on early downs and taking him off the field for a Neville Gallimore? Because I almost think they're worse with their run stopping guys, and I think he almost would provide more value there than just on pass rushing downs.
I think we need to see. I honestly think that with the additions that they made in the offseason, they may be in a lot better shape as a run defense than they have been previously. And they may be okay with the people they have as a run defense. I think, you're adding in Odigizua, who I think is going to be a lot better as a run stuffing defensive tackle, at least early on in his career. And I think that we'll see how Gallimore is developed, and we've got some other guys that we have brought in, including Urban that can play that position, and Bohanna. So you might have enough at defensive tackle that you could use him purely as a pass rushing 3 technique. But that's the good part about having him, is that get in there and see what you need, and he could fill a role on either the run or pass defense, I think.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if the Cowboys do anything in the veteran defensive tackle market, whether it's Geno Atkins, Gerald McCoy is still sitting out there. I don't think he gets signed anytime soon, but I think we'll have a better idea, 2 weeks from now, Landon, like right before that first preseason game, where the Cowboys are at defensive tackle and if they need to dive into the market to fill that need. That is it for today's show. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, you can download and subscribe to the podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back on Wednesday to finish up our training camp preview to talk about the safeties. So make sure you guys are ready for that. Follow us on Twitter at LockedOnCowboys. You can follow Landon at McCool BCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. We'll see you next time.